In this video, the auditor is following audit trails related to the organization's monitoring of process capability. Watch this video to see whether the auditor is undertaking an effective audit. So as you know, earlier then we were in the aluminium printing process.
Yeah.
And I looked at the way that before the part approval, you collected the statistical data to calculate the process capability.
Yeah.
Can you just talk me through the way that you calculated the capability and the acceptance criteria from the customer?
Yeah. The acceptance criteria from the customer was PPK 1.7, or to be very honest, 1.67, but we rounded up to 1.7.
Right, so PPK is the customer specific.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we actually did, and I have to say that the former one who was responsible for this calculation left the company, but I try to explain.
Okay.
We have divided our measurement in 5 in subgroups.
I can see that, yeah. So you've got 25 subgroups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 5 parts in each subgroup.
So 125 parts. Yeah.
And then there is a formula for standard deviation calculation, which we used.
Yeah.
And then after that, we did the CP/CPK calculation.
Yeah.
And to do it very simple, I told my colleague this is the result for CPK, but as the customer wants us to present as PPK, we just turn it over to PPK.
Right, okay, but if I just look at the basis of your calculation then, you've calculated the range for each of the subgroups, and then you've used the range values to calculate the standard deviation.
Yeah, exactly.
And that gave you a CPK of 1.72. Yeah. So you're above the minimum, but you've reported it as PPK, where we should be taking every data point.
Yeah, but as I said, the one who was responsible for this left the company, and the training has not taken part so far.
Right.
So our decision was we had about 1.72, so we decided then the customer will be satisfied.
With the PPK value, even though it's not PPK.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I do have a concern over that I will be raising during the audit.
Yeah.
But I have a follow-up audit question then. This study was done about 15 months ago when you introduced this product.
Yeah.
What about the monitoring of the ongoing capability of this process? You're obviously measuring reflectivity.
Yeah.
We've been seeing the way that you measure that. What about the ongoing capability of the process?
No, because we do not document the result of the reflectivity measure we perform. Our managing director decided it is no value for us. And we have no claims around this, and we have a very little amount of internal reactions. So we don't do any. We did it initially because it was a requirement when we did the PPAP submission.
Okay, well again, I do have a concern over that against the IATF requirement 9111 about the ongoing monitoring of the capability.
Yeah.
So again, I will be raising that when we come to the closing meeting later.
Yeah, and you should, because the quality manager will be there, and then he has to explain why doesn't we do what we have to do.
Yeah, and again, none of this is a blame of any individual, but from a system point of view, I do have some concerns here. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
So the key learning points. In any IATF 16949 audit, the auditor should focus on how is the organization monitoring the capability of their manufacturing processes. And many of you will be aware the key 2 indicators that are often used within the automotive supply chain are PPK and CPK. And I think many of us will agree that there is a lot of confusion about which indices to use. So the first thing that we should look at is what are the customer specific requirements, not only for the capability indices, but for the acceptance criteria for process capability. We saw in this video the customer requirements were for a process capability of PPK to a minimum of 1.7. But when the auditor started to look at the way the organization was calculating capability, they were basing it upon subgroups of data, and they were estimating the standard deviation based upon the subgroup variation. So even though they were reporting to the customer PPK, the way that they were actually calculating the capability was CPK. And I think this is a common area of weakness in many automotive organizations. And the auditor should have the competency to challenge the organization on how process capability is actually being calculated, whether it being done by using Excel sheets or whether it being used in terms of statistical software. Maybe the root cause of the problem in this organization was the person that had the relevant statistical knowledge had left the organization. In that case, because the person has left the organization, under the requirement in ISO 9001 for organization knowledge, how had the organization identified that there was a gap in knowledge here, and what had they done to try and fill that gap, ascertaining the right level of competency? Also, when auditing process capability, an auditor should challenge not only how the initial capability was calculated, but what is the process for monitoring the ongoing capability of the process. This is a requirement specified in IATF 16949 9.1.1.1. So what is the process for periodic revalidation that we've maintained the adequate level of process capability? So let's summarize. When auditing, particularly in production, an auditor can challenge the organization on how are they monitoring the capability of their manufacturing processes. That could be for a new manufacturing process, or it could be for an existing manufacturing process. And they should challenge the organization, taking into account customer-specific requirements, which indices should be used. Typically in the automotive industry, it can be PPK or CPK. Then the auditor should challenge what is the relevant acceptance criteria. That is not specified in IATF 16949. That needs to be specified by the customer or the organization. And then finally, the auditor should challenge the process of monitoring the ongoing capability of the process. Again, taken into account customer-specific requirements or defined by the organization.